So this is the Miyoo Mini. Up until now, this is the smallest little retro handheld I have owned. For a sense of scale, recently I reviewed Miyoo's Flip console, which is very small when it's folded up, a little larger when it is set up, so you can see that this thing is small. In fact, for a real sense of scale, we could even compare it next to an original Game Boy. It is absolutely tiny. This video is not about the Miyoo Mini, but I just wanted to start there because what I've got here is genuinely tiny. It's quite something to say that you've got a mini retro handheld that is dwarfed by the Miyoo Mini, but here we are. This is the GKD Pixel II. Before I even switch it on, let's just take a little look at how awesome this metal shell is. So it's completely encased in an aluminium shell. It's got this sort of ridged texture on the back, the little logo at the top there. It's got some neatly tucked in shoulder buttons. Basically, it's tuned into the fact that you're not going to be using them very often, but when you need them, they are there. I quite like that. It's got the standard D-pad, A, B, X, Y, and start select layout on the front, but on the side there are some additional buttons. In fact, there's this cool little sequence of slots which your lights shine through. We'll have a look at that in a minute. And then we've got the power button up at this point, and above it, this is like a home slash menu button. And on this side, volume. There's not a plus and minus on this one, it's just arrows up and down. At the bottom we have a single speaker, a USB-C charging port, and we have a 3.5mm headphone socket as well. It feels really solid. On the side here at the bottom near the D-pad we have the SD card slot. I got this unit for review from Lit NXT. It came with a 64GB GameKiddie branded card. So this is actually the first time I've had an SD card that's branded with the same brand as the console itself. Anyway, we will pop that back in. It has got a spring-loaded socket and the little scoop which suggests which way around to get the card, which is always good because I have damaged these before. What's more, the recess is enough that you can quite comfortably push that in even if you've got fairly short finger and thumbnails, and it's easy to get that back out again. That is a definite plus that isn't always a given with these consoles. It's got quite an angular shape to it, obviously because it's got this cast aluminium, but this ridge effect on the back is actually making it quite comfortable to hold. And speaking of holding it, it is definitely small. One of my main concerns about it before trying it was, are the ergonomics passable? I mean, with the Miyoo Mini, it is surprising just how well that works, but it's a bit awkward to reach the shoulder buttons at the back. It's much more comfortable to hold it down at the bottom like this. So there were some compromises, but generally like it was more ergonomic than I'd have expected. With this one I was even more cautious, despite the aluminium looking absolutely awesome. I love it with the green and black as well. Got quite angular edges to it, and all these little seams between the layers and the screws and things did give me some cause for concern as to what it might be like to actually hold and use. The fact of the matter is, it's not actually as bad as I thought. There are a few caveats which we will get to shortly, but on the whole I think it is a lovely design. I never had the original GameKiddie Pixel, so this is my first foray into their metal cased handhelds. I do think around the lens it's got that GKD Pixel logo, and they've kind of gone for making it look like it's made out of pixels. You can see what they're going for with that aesthetic, but it just looks like it's not very well done. It looks like they've taken a low res image or something. This little logo here is quite nice. I just think it feels like that's a bit much, and I think the actual shape speaks for itself. I can't help but think that if I had this without any of that branding, just absolutely plain on the front, it would really make all the bold statement it needs. It didn't really need those logos. I think the other branding is quite nice. I think if you can see on the A, B, X, Y, it keeps like a consistent font across all that. Start and select is just SE and ST. I quite like that. D-pad's nice enough. It's got like the little arrowheads and the circle in the middle on the side, and the menu button's got like 3 dots. Power, again, it's got that squarish font to it. Overall, the aesthetics are really nice. It's just a shame about these two. I really don't think it needed those, but it is a minor nitpick. Probably best to discuss the ergonomics and all the rest of it while it is switched on. So to switch on, you just press and hold the power button. Now this is in its second iteration of the operating system that's on it. When I first loaded it up, it had quite a nice aesthetic to it, and then I was going through some menus and there was an update button. I tapped on update and it changed the menu style to something that kind of resembled an old TV or an old cathode ray tube, and it looked kind of cool, so I've kept it with that ever since. I think it fits. The way this bezel is kind of recessed here works quite well. A lot of the time I find when you've got a smaller console, you end up getting your thumbprints all over the screen, and in this case, because it's set further back, even if your thumb is here, it's less likely to touch. I mean, you do get some thumbprints, but it's less likely to make full contact with it. So here I am on the menu screen, and again, this looks actually different to last time I loaded it up. Yeah, so I've got arcade, handheld, console, other. So you can go into app, you can go into settings, and this is where I kind of updated it all. But if I go into console, you've got all the consoles to choose from. This is a different look. So let's see if I can go into settings again. There we go. So there was this one called update that I tapped on, and it launches update, and then I waited a little while. Wow, so this must be the first time I'd switched it off. I've just been putting it into sleep mode. There we go. I really like this aesthetic, so I'd kept it on that. So you're going through all the different systems. You've got that cathode ray style with scan lines and so on. I thought it looked pretty cool, and you get like a little preview screenshot of all the different systems. And as you can see, there are a lot, considering it's just a 64GB card, there's a lot of systems on there. Obviously, there's a lot of systems that aren't really going to be relevant to something so small. You can only do so much with the ergonomics of this. This is not something you're going to be playing for hours and hours and hours. However, it is immensely portable. So you can just pocket it because it's super strong and robust. You can just take it anywhere you like and then play on it. So it will take up very little space, but it's immensely playable, particularly in short bursts. So if we go on Game Boy, for example, you can either scroll down like that, or you can tap the shoulder button to scroll a page at a time. And I'll go with my usual test, which is Tetris. First of all, it's usually checking, is it even on there? It's not always on these cards, but it is on this one, Tetris World. So we'll load that one up. You can start new game, or you can go to your auto save, and you can see I've played that before already. Just let that load up. I can't make up my mind as to whether the load times are a little slow, or because there's just no animations or anything like that as it's happening, you can't necessarily have anything else to distract you as it's loaded. It's set up with borders, in this case Game Boy Color, which look nice enough. Again, the bezel down here, it really didn't need that logo on there. I think in terms of my settings, I've got it a little low on the brightness. I think I dimmed it a little bit because I was playing it indoors at night, and you can change those settings. So I might bump that up a little bit before we try out another game. But if we have a quick look here, the screen is certainly good enough. I mean, for the size of the unit, it's always going to be a small screen. It's a shame it's not something that makes it all the way up to the edge of the bezels, but it is definitely enough. I mean, if you look at that compared to the size of the original Game Boy screen, it's actually about the same size as that original display on a unit that is immensely smaller. So for the amount of technology packed into this tiny little thing, gotta say, you can even make a mention to the box. The box itself is small. I don't normally go on about the packaging for these things, but it's almost like a pack of cards, and it looks quite nice, and it's pretty unobtrusive. So yeah, I like the design of the box. But onto the console itself, in terms of gameplay, it is quite comfortable to hold. These little ridges on the back make it comfortable to grip. Your thumbs tend to make their way to the D-pad quite easily. When it comes to actually playing, it's pretty good. One slight issue I have had though is to do with the buttons themselves. Now they are good, and I don't know whether it's to do with the scale of the unit being so small that I feel like I would prefer smaller movements, but it feels like there's actually quite a lot of travel in both the D-pad and the buttons. When I'm moving and making these quick, precise movements playing the game, what I'm having to do, and if you can see here, is they stick out quite a bit, so there's quite a bit of travel. It's a silicone membrane underneath there. There's quite a bit of movement, same with the buttons as well, quite a bit of travel on those. Now, not to say that they're not comfortable to use, it's really comfortable to use, but I feel like the input doesn't feel quite as snappy and precise. I normally don't necessarily like clicky buttons, but in this case I feel like slightly flatter buttons, almost like we've got on the Miu Flip. These are really nice buttons with very little travel, and I think maybe because I've been playing on that so much recently and then moved to that, the huge amount, well, not huge, but the relatively large amount of travel on these buttons kind of caught me off guard. The start and select, they've got the sort of tactile buttons on there. You can see I am able to play okay here with these, and certainly when it's something that you've got used to, it's good. I just think that that amount of travel just feels a little bit out of keeping with the small, snappy, little kind of precise nature of this unit. To come out of the game, we've got the menu button on the side. We just press that. and it brings you to the quick menu. If you come back out of there to the main menu and press up to get to the bottom of the list, you get to quit, and then you can come out of there and back to your menu. Now if we come out of here, there's various different background tunes on the menu which are pretty cool as well. I've got brightness set to 5 of 9, so I'm just going to turn that to the maximum and it should pick up a little more easily. We'll come back out of here. The menu is a little slow. It has got ports on there, so we have got the issue of, you know, your kind of pirate copies of Celeste, Stardew Valley, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge. I haven't tried playing any of those. I'm not generally keen on these things being on there. I'm quite happy playing Celeste because I have paid for it, and Stardew Valley I've paid for on the Switch as well, but at the same time, they shouldn't really be on there. But anyway, that's another debate for another day. You can go on all games or favourites. There isn't a last played, which I normally am quite fond of because I always forget what I've played, and going in there is quite handy. But we've got arcade, vertical arcade. Vertical arcade. Let's have a quick go of one of those. So if we pick a game from the vertical arcade list, what we get is a setup with the rotated screen. You were kind of holding it this way around. It's a bit awkward for holding it like that with the buttons, but you can use the shoulder buttons. So select will insert a coin, start will start your game, and your D-pad functions in this direction. So it works pretty well, and we can just choose our plane and then off we go. So you can see that I'm actually using the L1 button here. I think it's L1 and L2 for your bombs and things. I would like to have it as an auto fire because it tends to, it is small, it's quite difficult to keep a grip on. So it tends to wobble about a little bit like that, whereas if I was just holding for an auto fire, that would work well. That one does the bomb, and the R1 and R2 don't do anything. There's probably a way of setting up auto fire on it. But yeah, I think, you know, that is pretty epic. If you like your scrolling shooters, that is quite good fun. And then again, to come back out, incidentally, let's just cover up there. You can see you've got like the green light on the inside here, so it kind of shines out through these. It's almost like towards the back edge, but I still think it's quite a nice touch that that's how your power LEDs work. Press the menu button. The quick way of getting to the right point is you press B, then up, and then A, and then that quits you out and takes you to your main menu. Again, we've got vertical arcade, we've got MAME, I think it's whatever, I'll just go with MAME. Final Burn, Neo, Atari 2600, Atari 5200, Atari 7800, Atari Lynx, WonderSwan Color, Pico 8, MSX2, PC Engine, CD-ROM, Game & Watch, Nintendo, Game Boy, Super Famicom, Virtual Boy, Nintendo 64. We've got a weird little selection in there. Diddy Kong Racing, Dr. Mario 64, Mario Kart 64, Paper Mario, Road Rash 64. We've got Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Pokemon Mini, Nintendo DS, 3DO, Master System, Game Gear, Mega Drive, Sega CD, Sega Saturn, 32X, Dreamcast, Naomi, Vectrex, Neo Geo CD, Neo Geo Pocket, Neo Geo Pocket Color, PlayStation, PSP, Easy RPG, Open Bore. There is a lot. There is a lot for a 64GB card, and there's quite a lot of systems that it can play. For such a tiny little unit, it's quite good. Now, what you will find that although you have got, say, for example, the Naomi games, which is like your kind of arcade equivalent of the Dreamcast, and there's a lot of games that are on both systems, it can run these games. Some of them are really good. Like, if we'll try loading Resurgence, that's a game that I quite like, and I have tested already. Again, it's a scrolling shooter. You'll notice a bit of a theme there. It can run this. It does run it a little slow, but it's a tiny little, I mean, it's practically a keychain, this thing, isn't it? It is running, as you can see, maybe it's working, but it's running relatively slowly. But the fact that I can play these games on something that I could basically have my keys hanging off is quite incredible. But it is definitely more at home when it comes to emulating actual handhelds. So if we come out of there again, B, up, A to come out of there. If we look at something like Neo Geo Pocket Color, see, it's a little slow sometimes to respond. I think the more demanding the game is that you're running, the more of a challenge it puts on it in terms of closing it down quickly. If you're playing something like NES or Game Boy, then it's a bit quicker. So if we go to Neo Geo Pocket Color, we can make our way through our list there. My go-to with that is usually Magical Drop, so we'll go on there. I think that this works really well, and this is where this machine kind of comes into its own. I think that the screen looks great with this game. It's got like a kind of a pixel grid overlay preset. To be honest, I've not messed about with any of the presets that are on here because I've found them all fairly pleasant. They are scaled so they look good. You could maybe stretch them to get them a little bit bigger, but like I say, I think everything looks all right on this. So we will have a quick go. Seems like I've left it in the middle of a game, so we'll see how I get on. But yeah, I think for games like this, it's pretty much perfect. And I think this is where it excels when you're playing fairly undemanding games, but they do look really good. And I think not only it's not so much about how well it handles those systems, it's just what feels right on it. With this, it's just kind of, it looks great and it plays well. And considering this game gets fairly frantic, the controls are certainly good enough. And although I did mention before about the fact that you get a lot of travel on the buttons, it's something that once you're used to, you're not really going to notice as much. I think it's largely because I was coming from the Mio Flip, which has got really nice tactile buttons, and I was quite used to that small amount of travel on the buttons, and then moving to this where there's a bit more movement involved. But what you can, well, if I shut up for a minute, you'll hear that the buttons themselves are actually very quiet, which is something that's not always the case. Now I am playing and testing here, and at this point I am starting to get a little bit crampy. I've got to be honest. So let's see if I can actually beat this level and see how my hands are doing. And also we'll take a look at how I'm kind of, there we go. So I'm not really conscious of how I'm holding it here, and the way I tend to use it is I'll rest it at the back on these two fingers at the top, and then I'll have my fingers kind of like that with it sitting on this surface. And as I'm playing, my sort of little fingers kind of come around here, and it's around here where it starts to cramp a bit. It is warm in here, so my hands are getting a little bit sweaty, but the console itself is not getting hot. I mean, for what it is and for what it sets out to be, I think it is a huge success. I've not watched any other videos about it, don't really know what other people's misgivings were. I tried to just kind of go in and get my own impressions. So for me, the only things I have concerns about is the amount of travel on the buttons, which is traded off with how nice and quiet and comfortable they are to use. There is the ergonomics, which are surprisingly good. However, you can't get around the fact that if something like this is this small, it is going to get a little bit crampy after a while. If your hands are big, that is probably going to cause you more issues. My hands are relatively small, so it's not too bad for me. Certainly for kids to play, it would be phenomenal, particularly with it being built like a tank. I get the feeling it would survive quite a bit of abuse, although I have been generally quite careful with it. I think it looks really unique. I think it definitely stands out in amongst all of the other handhelds I've got. This definitely feels like something new. I'd been trying to get hold of one for a little while. One of them did go missing, as discussed in a previous video. That was going to be originally having the silver one, which I thought looked nice, and then this one sent as the green, and I love it. It's actually the same colour as my car, so I might actually leave it in the glove box of my car and have it as a go-to in terms of when I'm sat in a car park waiting or anything like that. I'll just have a little handheld to get out and play. I think it'll really look the part in there. But I am rambling anyway. This thing, if you want something that is really small, if you like the idea of the metal shell, and if you want to play some retro games on it, I would say this is really good. As I mentioned before, there's like 4 shoulder buttons, but they're sensibly avoiding having them being all uncomfortable on the back. I did mention with the Mio Mini, I'm not really a fan of these. I think they felt a bit cheap, and when you're trying to play, they feel a little bit uncomfortable and in the way. With this, it knows that you're probably going to be playing games like this on it most of the time, because anything like a Dreamcast game, you're going to have like too much going on and you're going to end up cramping up. I think it's better for things like your Neo Geo Pocket Color, for your Game Boy games, Game Boy Advance. You can maybe get away with using these 2 shoulder buttons, but the flexibility is there. Like, you've got A, B, X, Y, you've got a D-pad, no need for an analog stick on this thing. You've got 4 shoulder buttons, but you've got a nice plain, comfortable back. And yeah, I think I'm pleasantly surprised. My original thoughts were that it was going to look really cool, but be quite impractical and uncomfortable to play. I've got a few things to be testing out and reviewing, and I've not even gone near them because I've been enjoying playing on this thing so much over the past week. And I think that is testament to just how good this is. I got it from Lit NXT. They sent me it for review, and wasn't paid for it or anything like that, but yeah, I think it's pretty cool. So if you go on their website, you can use Joe Bleeps as a discount code, and you can get one for yourself and see what you think. Of course, there are alternatives. I think this is probably the closest alternative I've got. It is bizarre that it is taller, it is wider, and it is also thicker than the GKD Pixel II, because this thing has always felt tiny to play on. I think the scale of the buttons are a little smaller, kind of fits with this a little bit more. But yeah, to be going from something like this, which I've always thought of as tiny, to something even smaller, and to have it as something that's actually surprisingly playable to use, I think it's pretty good.